Now for our first problem, graph g of x, which is equal to 4 over x, then compare the graph with the graph of f of x, which is equal to 1 over x. So the first thing you'll do here is we begin graphing f of x, which is equal to 1 over x. So that will be our initial task. Now you have two ways out on how to graph this. It's either you use the graphing calculator for those who are able to download this, so you can use that. So you would go to Scratchpad and then to the graphing part. Now you would press tab to bring out your space here to type the function, which is 1 over x, and hit enter. So that is our graph for the parent function. Next thing you'll do here is you would for those who are unable to download the application, you can go to desmos.com and graph in there. So now I'm here in Desmos. I would write the function, which is 1 over x, then hit enter there. So that is now our graph. Now, before we move on, let me introduce to you some steps that will serve as your guide in graphing rational functions. First is we would want to identify our vertical and horizontal asymptotes. And second is we would want to state the domain and range. Third, we create a table and then plot the points. Then fourth, we would want to draw the branches of the hyperbola so that they would pass through the plotted points and approach the asymptotes. Now going back to the problem. So step one would be we want to identify our vertical and horizontal asymptotes. Now, if you try to see, the problem is in a over x form. And what do you know about a over x form? Whenever a function is in that form, the asymptotes will be both at zeros. So meaning your vertical asymptotes, which is x equals 0, will be here. That's your vertical asymptote. While your horizontal asymptote, which is y is equal to 0, will be here. So that's our step 2. Step 3 will be we would want to state the dominant range. Now in this problem here, the dominant range were identified at the last part. It doesn't matter, okay, because this example is from your book, but you will be ending with the same answer. Now, state the dominant range. So the dominant range of any function that is in a over x form would be all non-zero real numbers. Okay, all non-zero real numbers. Next, step 3, make a table and plot the points. Now, I will teach you here a trick. Okay, some of you might remember this. So how do we create a table? Actually, you don't need to create a table. You would just copy the table. And how do we do that? We would graph our g of x, which is equal to 4 over x. So again, we have two ways on how to do that. Using the calculator, you would write 4 over x. Double check that. That's 4 over x. And then hit enter. Now, this will be the graph of your um, second function, which is 4 over x. Now, you want a table, isn't it? So you want to bring out a table. And to do that, you would press menu. You go to 7 and then 1. Now, these values here are for our function of x, which is 1 over x. Now, how can you bring out now the table for the second graph? So you would hit that arrow over there, the right arrow. So now you have here the values for your g of x, which is equal to 4 over x. So All you need to do now is to copy. Now, how do you copy? How do you pick? You would um, identify first, or you would go back to the graph by identifying your asymptote, basically your vertical asymptote, which is 0. So since this is 0, so you would want to get 2 or 3 values to the left and 2 or 3 values to the right. That's 0, so I want negative, so I would want to bring those out. So I can pick -1, that's my x, and -4 will be the y, -2, 2, -3, -1.33. And then for the positive part, you can choose 1, 4, 2, 2, 2, and then 3, 1.33. So that's how to use our calculator. Now, how do we use our Desmos calculator? So you would type here the function, which is 4 over x. Now, what's nice with Desmos is you have here an option to directly open the table. And so the first thing you'll do is to pick your expression, and you would click this button here, and it would give you these options. So you have here a table, duplicate, or close, or delete. So you would hit the table. So you are now converting that function into a table. So there's your table. All you need to do now is copy it, and you're good. So you would just write your table in here. You would just copy that. After copying, plot your points, same as this. So these are your points, plotted points. And then you would want to do step 4. Step 4 now will be you would want to draw the 2 branches of the hyperbola so that they pass us through your points. So it should look like this, the red one. So just connect your points, make it sure to follow a curve, the curve structure of it, and you're done. You're good. So going back to the problem, it says here compare the graph. So just use the graph to compare it. So the graph of G lies farther from the axis, which is very obvious. So the red graph is farther from the axis. When you say axis, the x-axis and the y-axis. And then both graphs lie in the first and third quadrants. Remember our quadrants? This is our first quadrant, second, third, fourth. So it's counterclockwise. So when you're counting, you should be starting from here and then you do it counterclockwise. And of course, they will have the same asymptotes, domain, and range.